Hare Krishna. Can you hear me back there? That one. Okay. So then if I stand here, it's no problem. All right. So just, we'll start in 4 more minutes, my dear devotees. Oh, that is. That seems to have changed it completely. All right. 2 more minutes, then we'll start. Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming here, and thank you for y'all online. So I'll just a little self-aggrandizement first. I'll tell you a little bit about myself so that you know, because people say, "Oh, nobody knows you in Australia," so except for Rambaru Mataji. So I'll give a little background. So that's me with the hair, pulling pulling Subhadra's cart in New York in 1976, and that year was my first introduction to Krishna consciousness, and I made it onto the BTG. That was a BTG picture. And for about 12 years, I was in Detroit Temple as a brahmachari. You can tell because my shoelaces are untied. Typical brahmachari. And after that, I married. My wife her name is Ananda Brinavaneshwari. She's not American, she's from Ireland. I'm from New York. And we moved to Vrindavan and we lived there for 21 years. My wife was running this Gurukul there. Vrindavan Vinod Prabhu, who lives here, I think, was working with her. And after a while, I started, that's my wife and my son. When my son got initiated, that's her. And then we, so I started to going to the GBC meetings in 1995, and I saw how they spent so much time on conflicts. and usually not really with much success. So I just, a few years later, I asked for a $500 grant so I could buy some books on conflict resolution, because I didn't know anything about it. So I just started reading, and there was a devotee's next door neighbor in Boston was a famous person in conflict resolution. She's 90 years old now, and she kind of took me under her wing and trained me up. She's at MIT, which is a famous university in America. And we've shared 9,000 emails the last 23 years. And so she helped me start ISKCON. Oh, God, I'm all choked up. Helped me start ISKCON Resolve in 2002, which is a conflict resolution program for devotees, for ISKCON. Thank you. And I ended up, I dropped out of school to become a brahmachari. But I went back to get a master's degree 27 years later. And then I started, when we were living in India, I started training judges. I was working for the Supreme Court, training judges in conflict resolution. So that's me giving a talk at one of them. And I also presently, I was working for the US government for about 13 years. I retired, but I still am a consultant for NASA. So I still do that just part-time. Like that. So that's a little bit about me. All right. So Krishna was not a very successful mediator by his mercy, right? This is him mediating between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, and by his arrangement, it didn't work out. But we hope to have a better success than he did on one level. Yeah. So, I like the saying. It's just that it's so important that we walk our talk. That I remember one time I was when I was brahmachari, I was Jayadvaita Swami's servant, and I remember we were at a ticket counter in an airport, and the lady there, she handed Maharaj a ticket. He said, "You know what I like about you guys?" He says, "You are what you pretend to be." I thought that was a good compliment. But anyway, our internal. What we say we are should match who we are, right? Our internal should match our external. And Prabhupada, talked about this. You have dedicated your life for Krishna, and therefore you should be ideal. We are introducing Krishna conscious movement for the harmony and goodwill of humanity. But if you yourself are suffering from the very ills we are trying to remove, how can the people be influenced favorably? And I love this last line. Stop this fighting, tolerate. Good, And I have, this probably takes up like 1/10 of a page, and I have, 5 pages of just all of, so many of Srila Prabhupada's quotes about the importance of getting along with each other. Just a couple more. I am very concerned, however, that in the midst of such good reports, the devotees there are quarreling. This report is not very good. We have so much work to do, we cannot lose solidarity. Do not cause a crack there with any fighting spirit or competition. Whenever I hear complaints or disturbances in our censors, my mind becomes too much disturbed and I cannot properly translate my books. So please spare me from such disturbances by cooperating all together, God brothers and God sisters. Although I was told by Ajita Prabhu that there's 0 conflicts here. Yeah, so it's so nice. So, okay, so that's the end of the presentation. We don't need any more. Okay. I could ask you this. When you hear the word conflict, what word comes to mind? Yes. Differences. Disagreements. Arguments. Criticism. Misunderstanding. Go ahead. You want misunderstanding? Well, you can both have it. No worries. Okay. Hurt. Emotions. Tension. Okay. So you notice that most of these words are kind of on the negative side, right? And that's understandable. What our hope is, and our experience often is, 70% of the time or so, is that on the, you're in all of those things that you say, you deal with it properly, and then actually relationships improve, right? So it's not a bad thing that there's a lot of conflicts in an organization. The question is, how do you deal with them? Good organizations know how to deal with them well. And if you think ISKCON is like special, I hate to say it, but in this field, we're not that special. I've been hired by a number of churches, by Jewish organizations, even by one Islamic organization. And I remember the first book I read on Christian conflict resolution. The first sentence is, Christians do not fight. They fight dirty. So we're in good company. But I see that often other faith-based organizations have very similar kind of concerns that we sometimes find ourselves in. Oh, by the way, this is not meant to be a lecture, and nobody brought a pillow to go to sleep. So make this conversational. Anytime you have a question, a comment, a thought, please. I guess it's easier if you raise your hand, but just let's make this interactive, okay? Is that agreeable? All right, please. Otherwise, I may fall asleep. Yes? Is there a difference between conflict and difference of opinion? Well, some of it is semantics, one word, it depends on the situation. But difference of opinion can be, doesn't have to be a conflict. We can agree to disagree, right? And also a disagreement may be like, who's going to pick up our son from cricket practice? They play cricket in this country, right? Yeah, and that's not much of a big conflict. And we'll talk about that later, the different levels. Yeah, so I would say it's a low-level conflict. Is that all right? Okay. Anything else? Okay. So what are, yeah, we could do this. Why not? No, I was going to put you into groups, but forget it. We won't put you into groups because we're all kind of scattered. But think about this for 30 seconds. What are some of the costs and consequences of conflict for us in Srila Prabhupada's society? So it's amazing how long 30 seconds seems when there's silence. Wait, 30 seconds. No, sorry, you're so enthusiastic. Okay. Do we have another? We only have one mic? Oh, here.
It's very displeasing to Srila Prabhupada.
It's very displeasing.
Because he wanted us, he said, ISKCON can't fail. The only problem will be from within.
Yes.
So that's a really major
very nice
thing to consider.
Thank you. So that's a huge, that maybe is the biggest one, right? Prabhupada's not pleased. Someone else? Yes, Prabhu? Oh, you have to do the work. Gopal's young. He can run around. Sorry. I don't mind doing it because I need to get my 10,000 steps in. But.
Yeah, two issues: loss of faith when you see the devotees, and also religion simply means politics.
Yeah, it's a good point about well, both points are good. Faith. My experience is that nothing gives devotees greater faith when they see senior devotees having loving exchanges, and nothing seems to ruin their faith when they see senior devotees at each other's throats. Yeah. What else? Yes.
So many devotees over the years have left ISKCON. Like in the years I've been involved in the movement, probably more have left than those have actually come. And I mean, that's taken a toll on my faith. I'll be totally honest. It's like, I guess that's the main thing, just like it can break your heart, because bhakti is a process of our heart. And when there's disagreements, and if it's something that's very dear to us, it can, you just think, why? I've spent so many years in my of my life dedicated to this movement and this process. And yeah, that's basically.
Yes, yes, it can hurt people's trust and faith. Is the microphone up? Where's the other one? Yeah.
Loss of confidence and sense of safety in the relationship.
Loss of confidence, sense, yes. Let's look into that safety thing for a second. Thank you, Prabhu. Again, take about 10 seconds to, in your mind's eye, think of a person that you totally trust. And let's not make it Prabhupada or your guru. Let's come a little more down to earth than that. But someone that you really trust. Okay? Got that person in your mind? Now think of someone that you really don't trust. Just somehow or other, your karma and their karma, you know, what did Prabhupada say? Don't be upset at the agent of your karma. So it's just somebody who you just don't trust at all. So think less than 10 seconds about that person. Don't want you to get depressed. What's the difference in communication between those two? When you talk to those two, what's different? So one person you'll be very open-hearted with, and the other person you'll be super careful. Okay? Yes? Sense of reciprocation, yeah? Okay? Yes? You're much warmer with one person. Yeah, much more guarded. I like the way even your body language is much more guarded. Yeah, so it's interesting. Any more about this question? One more? Two more? Yes, Robert.
You can't get anything done if everybody's in conflict.
Can't get anything done.
We're here to do something together, and you're not doing it together if everybody's fighting about what they're doing.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was my inspiration to start this 20-some odd years ago, because I looked in the mirror and I said, Raj, you're not that great a preacher, let's face it. So if you can, because when people get in conflict, the mission becomes second or third on their list. And dealing with this rascal, this person, right, is, you know, just like if you think about this, I think if we were honest, many of us, if we do have a person we don't get along with, we sometimes meditate on them more than Krishna or our friends, right? So my inspiration, one of my inspirations was to serve devotees so they can get back on track in serving Prabhupada's mission. So thank you for bringing that. You have another one?
Thank you. We can also expand understanding for each other by understanding each other's likes and dislikes and their boundaries.
So getting involved in people's likes and dislikes?
And we can expand our understanding for each other.
Expend a lot of energy?
Like by
We can expand understanding.
By understanding their likes and dislikes and their expectation or boundary, things like that, through conflict.
Through conflict. Well, that's interesting. Yes, like I said, conflict can be okay if we deal with it in a good way. So let's move on to that. The first thing I want to talk about is causes of conflict. Okay? And there's many. It's just like in the 18th chapter, verse 13 of the Gita, Krishna says there's 5 factors. So there's multiple factors, but let's talk about the number one cause of conflict in the world, in families, amongst friends, and in ISKCON. It's all the same number one, okay? And, just a statement from Prabhupada, a devotee is as thoughtful as a non-devotee is speculative. I meant that, I brought that up because it's good to analyze conflicts and know where they're coming from. So, assumptions are the number one cause of conflict, okay? And I'll prime the pump by giving you one example. Well, a few. Actually, let me ask you, what are some examples in Shastra of assumptions that have went bad? Yeah, who said that? Excellent. Yes, that may be the most. right? Just think of that. Just because Parikshit Maharaj thought Samak Rishi was faking samadhi, he garlands him with a dead snake. Kali Yuga begins because Shringi curses a great soul. The Bhagavatam is spoken. Of course, that's Krishna's arrangement. So many things happen because of that one assumption. Did you have one? Yeah, okay. Copycat, yeah. Duryodhana's assumption that Krishna wasn't God, and that didn't work too well for him, right? Yep, good one. There's so many, actually. I definitely think the Shastra is teaching us something by, just a few more. I love this one. So the monkey warriors, look at their body language. You see their body language there? Because they don't think, they think Vibhishan is, what is it? A wolf in sheep's clothing? Is that how it goes? Faking it, right? So they made an assumption about him based on his birth, right? He was born in a demon family. His association, he hung out with Ravana and Kumbhakarna. I don't know, but I assume demons dress definitely than the monkey warriors, but maybe differently than Ram. But this is a great lesson for us, right? Do we ever make assumptions about people based on their dress or their birth, right? So that's definitely a lesson there. The Yamadutas assumed that Yamaraj was supreme. Hiranyakashipu assumed that he was immortal. He also was in for a big surprise, like Duryodhana. Yeah. 4 Kumaras? They assumed that they could just strut into Vaikuntha? Is that what you mean? Oh, okay, yeah. Jai and Vijay assumed that they were just, as they say in Hindi, bachas, just kids. Yeah, meanwhile they were like really old, right? Even though they had that body. Good one, yes? This one is right, Parvati, thought that Chitraketu was making fun of her husband, which was a unique situation, right? And several chapters of the Bhagavatam take place because of that assumption, right? The whole Vitrasura pastime and everything. So assumptions are all over the place. That's the one. There you go. There's your... When Vishwarup took sannyas, Sachimata thought Advaitacharya had persuaded him to do so. Therefore, she accused Advaitacharya of this, which was an offense at his lotus feet. Later, Lord Chaitanya induced his mother to take the dust of Advaitacharya's lotus feet, and thus her Vaishnava aparad was nullified. So even the Lord's mother can make assumptions. So think about this. Think of an assumption that you have made that was incorrect or someone made about you. Okay, it usually takes a minute to think of one. I'm not. By the way, you don't have to. I'll ask if anyone wants to share, but you don't have to. So don't. But think of a time when you made an assumption that ended up being incorrect, or someone made an assumption about you. Someone have one they're willing to share? Yes, okay, yes, Prabhu?
I've got a couple, but this one...
Well, choose your best one.
Well, I'll share this one because
Juiciest one.
I thought of it first. The assumption was that because I was seen to be spending time with somebody and conversing with somebody, that I shared that person's opinions on certain things.
Ah, yeah, that's a good one.
Whereas in fact, I was challenging his opinions on those things in that conversation.
Very good.
But
Yes.
the opposite was assumed.
Yeah, that happened to me just today, actually. Same thing. And one of the ladies? Okay, well, think about it, and this Prabhu had...
Yeah, I guess it's a bit embarrassing, but
Embarrassing is great.
I guess it's an assumption where you can treat someone perhaps a certain way, particularly out in public. They turn around, they have Tulsi Mala on, and then all of a sudden, oh, hi, Paul, no problem. You're treating someone a certain way, and then you realize, oh, it's a devotee, I can, I got better treat him nicer. Like this sort of assumption is, I think, pretty pervasive and very wrong. But it
Nice.
happens.
Yeah, that can happen, yes. Yes, Mataji. Well, give her the mic, please.
I won't give the details, but in,
All right.
in reflecting,
No fun.
in reflecting about what I felt someone was assuming about me, in reflecting just now, I realised that I was assuming about them, and there was the conflict. We were both assuming.
Okay. I had a real juicy one, bad one. So I was a bhakta when Srila Prabhupada left this world, so I got I've been initiated 3 times. And so, like, in 1979, I was a staunch brahmachari, fired up Sankirtan leader, and I sat next to, and then Burijan Prabhu had just been visiting our temple in Detroit. I didn't know who he was, and if you know Burijan Prabhu, he's very unassuming, and, he's not unassuming is a good word, right? Fair word for him? Yeah. So I sat next to him, and I said, so Prabhu, what's your service? And he said, I'm a teacher. And I said, well, okay, that's nice. Do you go on Sankirtan on the weekends? He said, no. I said, that's Maya. Prabhupada said everyone should join the Sankirtan party as soon as possible. So, he joined in 1968, and he was senior devotee. Anyway, he just picked up his tray and moved to another table without saying a word. And then fast forward, 1991, I took initiation from him. But for first exchange was chastising him. So, and then someone said, oh, don't you know who that is? He joined in 26 seconds. Oops. So, yeah, don't judge a book by its cover. All right? Yes, you have another one?
For me, because I assist my husband with the deity worship, and sometimes I do the training for big Goranta dressing, so sometimes it's just systems, but if I'm training someone who hasn't been in deity worship, sometimes I get the feeling that they feel like, who do you think you are? I'm senior to you, but I'm just showing systems and respectful, so I back away also, and I just shut down.
Well, that's interesting. So what Mataji just said was sometimes we assume people are making assumptions about us, right? And that's good. You're kind of sensitive. Okay, one more.
And one Easter goes, the different points come up. One was report about the restaurant Govindas. It was doing very well. And the other point was that please keep the temple garden shed closed in case someone steals from there. And somebody asked me afterwards, said, is somebody stealing from Govindas? They just put the two together.
They conflated the two, yeah, okay. So there's nothing wrong with assumptions. We make assumptions all the time. It's just part of being a human being. Okay? So we're not going to tell you, don't make any more assumptions. That's not possible, as long as the soul is still in the body. The thing is that when and probably more than half of our assumptions are correct, okay? But when we make a wrong assumption and we act on it, that can cause trouble and even Vaishnava aparad. So what we're talking about here is to catch ourselves and to be aware that we're making an assumption. And in a few minutes from now, we'll talk about how to deal with them. Okay, but that's just the whole thing, just to, kind of like go up onto the balcony and look down at our mind and see how our mind is working. And a lot of it is making assumptions, right? You might have made assumptions about this presentation. Well, I'll go there, but I'll probably leave after 5 minutes. It's going to be boring, or whatever, So we make them all the time. That's okay. Oh, let me ask you one other question. What assumptions do people in Australia make about ISKCON devotees? Get a job? I was once doing distributing books in the airport with Gunagari Maharaj, and the guy said, "Get a job." And Maharaj said to him, "Get a brain." And the guy said, "I have a brain." And Maharaj said, "Use it." Yes.
Hippies?
Hippies? Okay, that were hippies. Others? We don't eat well. My God, are you kidding? This breakfast this morning was like ridiculously good. We don't eat well, really? Okay. Don't eat. Yeah, right, it's true. It's Oz, I forgot. Yes. Okay. Now, I think, yes? That we're a bit cultish? Okay. Yes? Go, Nishin Kavachapu. There's drugs in the food. Sometimes I wish there was. Yeah, drugs in the food. But there's a lot of positive in Australia about us, isn't it? About devotees? That's not my impression. More than a lot of countries I've visited. Yeah. But it's good to be aware also that at least that so we behave properly in public and all that. Okay. So, yes. You make a false assumption and you take action on it, that's scary. And then, because of, like that example of Sachi Mata, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu warned his devotees not to commit Vaishnava aparad, which he described as a mad elephant offense. When a mad elephant enters a beautiful garden, it destroys everything. So I couldn't find a picture of an mad elephant going through a garden. I did find this, which is an elephant toppling a car. But just imagine, a really nice garden and an elephant, right? Couldn't hear that elephant just destroy everything, right? It could just be, some like the pictures of some of the places that have been bombed in recent weeks. So it's a serious thing, and that's one thing we should avoid, right? That's another assumption we should be careful about. And this is one of my favorite quotes, because my tendency is I'm a kind of worrying kind of person. So I really like this quote. I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened. Has anyone ever worried about something and it didn't take? Okay, yeah. It's not only me. But thank you, Krishna. Yeah. So that's also assumptions, right? And Krishna says, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, na soshati, na kankshati, to avoid too much worrying about the future. There's a healthy way of worry, of thinking about the future, but there's also that anxiety-ridden, illogical, just worrying for the sake of worrying kind of thing. Yeah, Mark Twain had a good quote on that. So I'll tell you the story of one of my favorite stories about assumptions was I used to work for the U.S. government, and my main work was with, I think, here do you call it indigenous people? Yeah, okay, with Native Americans, they would call them there. So I would often fly, my wife's a temple president in Washington, D.C., so we live in Washington, D.C., but I would fly almost every week out to, they call them reservations, which are mainly out in the western part of the United States. So I flew into this one place, Oklahoma City, late at night, and I always have to rent a car to get to the place the next day. And the government only allows us to rent economy cars. Really nothing flashy, really, yeah. So it was late at night, and the rent-a-car place only had one car left, and it was a red Mustang convertible. I don't know if you have Mustangs here, but I was happy because they had to give it to me at the economy rate. So I thought, great, So I drove into, these reservations are usually quite poor. So if you can imagine this kind of like mall with all the stores boarded up except for this one office and a huge parking lot with like kind of weeds coming out. So my point is you could see the red Mustang from a mile away. Do you kilometer, whatever? Kilometer, sorry, 2 kilometers away. So I got my computer set up in a conference room and waited to do the training, and no one showed up. And I was like, waited 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, a half hour. Finally, I went to the supervisor. I said, I'm ready. And he said, he has body language like those, like the monkey warriors before. And he said, we canceled the training. I said, what? I just flew 3.5 hours here, rented a car, drove another 2 hours. I said, why? He said, we are so sick and tired of hot shots like you from Washington, D.C. You know, we don't want to deal with jerks like you. If you know a little bit about history, they haven't had Native Americans haven't had a lot of, American Indians haven't had a lot of luck with older white men with gray hair from Washington, D.C. for the last 200 years. Anyway, so he canceled the training. And I said, why? I said, you know, why are you calling me a hotshot from D.C.? He said, because we follow all the government rules, and who the hell do you think you are driving that fancy car and spending more of the government money? And I laughed at first, which got him even more angry. But finally, I explained to him what happened. And anyway, we had a few laughs, and the training went on. But the point is, he made an assumption just based on the kind of car I drove. Do you ever make assumptions about the kind of car someone drives? Oh, yeah? Do they have Hummers here? Yeah, good. Yeah, because if you see a Hummer, you just assume the person is an environmentalist. Yeah. So this is kind of how assumptions work. At the bottom of the ladder, we just take in the world neutrally, like, let's say, a camera on our phone, right? Just whatever's there. But then we tend to focus on something. Like they focused on the car, right? If I would have come in today with like dreadlocks down to here and a tie-dye shirt, you might have made some assumptions about me. Yeah, man. Thank you. Right? Or if I don't know, if I had a $5,000 Armani suit on, he's like, what is he doing here, right? So we focus on something. And then they added some meaning to, you know, because a red Mustang convertible that has 4 wheels, and so does a inexpensive, I don't know what you have, Ford or Fiats, but they give off a different vibe, right? The fancy car. And they made an assumption that I spent more money on it. They drew a conclusion that I was a hotshot from D.C. It reinforced their belief of the world, and they took an action by canceling the training temporarily. How long do you think it takes to go up that ladder? Yeah, seconds, right? We can do it quickly. No matter what's that line? Jumping to conclusions should become an Olympic sport. Right? Yeah. So how to deal with assumptions if they can cause Vaishnava aparad, if they can, you know, if they're the number one cause of conflict in the world, how to deal with them and be more careful. So, well, one president, Ronald Reagan, he said, trust but verify. It's like one of my close friends, because we managed ISKCON Vrindavan together for a number of years, His Holiness Kadamba Maharaj. One time he said to me, love and trust. He said, Braj, love and trust? Love, I love everybody. Trust? Not necessarily. Yeah. So first thing, it's good to just remind ourselves that we don't always get things right. Right? We can be illusioned, we can make mistakes, our senses are imperfect, etc. But then you kind of come down the ladder, and the main thing of all of this is this last one, thinking of another explanation. What could have been another explanation for Parikshit Maharaj? And Samak Rishi. What could he have said? No, there might be, besides interpreting that he was faking it, what else could he have thought? Okay, just that he was not in the right consciousness to make that assumption. The other one, he could have just said, no, maybe he is in samadhi. Yeah, right? What could have Parvati thought? Yeah, maybe he wasn't making fun of my husband. Maybe he was just, because it is an interesting situation, right? You know, you have your wife sitting on your lap and you're preaching to sannyasis. Imagine that in ISKCON. that would hit social media pretty quickly, right? Okay, so one thing, just consider other possible explanations. Yes, thank you. Who's that? Yeah, yes, what is my role in this situation? Excellent, yes. Which is very similar to what Mr. Kavachaprabhu was saying. Yeah, great. And this is one of the best ones. When you find yourself making assumptions, be curious. You know, the mantra is be curious, not judgmental. Right? So if, like I had this actually happen to me once. We were online, I was at the end of like the prasadam line, and there was like 8 jalebis left. Right? And one of the devotees came out, not in the line, and took all the jalebis. Right? And I had just taught this, so my first reaction was, "What a rascal!" Who doesn't he see that we're here and that there's probably just enough for the rest of us? And he's just anyway. You can imagine the kind of assumptions that we tend to make, right? But I remember this. So I went up to him and I said, "Prabhu, help me understand why you took all the jalebis." And then he said, "Well, actually, there was these guests. It's their first time here, and all the other prasadam was pretty much gone, so I wanted to give them it." So he had a reason. He had a reason other than all of the offensive things I was thinking about him. Right? So be curious rather than judgmental. This can save a lot. Who was it? Shonaka Rishi achieved perfection by being curious, right? He's Arto Jigyasa Artati. Curiosity is one of those mentioned. What chapter is that? 7? 4th? Okay, 4th. So yes, being curious instead of jumping to a conclusion. If it's possible, it's not every situation you can do it, but you go up to that devotee and just ask, "Help me understand." If he would have just said, "How did you get a red Mustang?" Right? That would have saved us a lot of time. Right? Sachi Mata would have said, "Advaitacharya, did you preach to my son about taking sannyas?" Right? So be curious rather than judgmental. One more, and then I'll see if you have any questions on all of this. This is a really good video. I'm going to show it a little later. Well, first I'll take any questions, comments so far on assumptions. This is good. This is like weight loss program.
Just wondering, what's the role of humility and Vaishnava etiquette in conflict?
Well, you got 3 hours. But in terms of assumptions, humility is, okay, my mind and my intelligence are telling me this is right, but humility will let me check and see if I got it right or not. Yeah. So this is a good way to avoid Vaishnava aparad on one hand and practice a certain kind of humility on the other. Okay? Yes.
So what would be the best strategy or the next steps? If someone's made an assumption about you, but they refuse to explain what the assumption is, why they've made it, they've just absolutely said, no mediation, don't want to have anything to do with you because they made a certain assumption. What's the best way? Do you just suck it up and just forget about it? Or
Well, first of all, we might not know they're making an assumption if they haven't told us, right? That may be. But let's say we assume that they have made an assumption. There's different ways to answer that. I'd say just one sentence that Prabhupada, he said it in a few times, that has really, I think, saved me a lot in Krishna consciousness, is when he said, "Respect them from a distance." In other words, I don't know if that's answering your question, but I just thought I'd bring it up because it kind of came to my mind. So, that person that you really don't like, or that person who's really causing some disturbance, okay, you don't have to spend any time with them, but we don't have to criticize them. Just respect them, but from a distance. And I found that that's really saved me a lot of times over the years. But that probably doesn't fully answer your question. Sometimes you can talk to one of their friends and say, I'm really having a struggle dealing with this person. Might you talk to them? Sometimes in the right situation, you might be going to one of their authorities. Sometimes it's just good to leave it alone, find some way to offer them some service. It really depends on, so much of this is the time, place, and circumstance, And so you were saying you tried to ask them what assumption they're making, they won't talk about it. What to do? Well, sometimes, remember I mentioned 70% before? When we do mediations, about 70% of them end in an agreement. About 95% of them end in some better understanding of each other. Is that okay? Let's see, is there any men on this side? Oh, just see. And I just assumed that you knew 10 times more than me, but only 8 times more than me. Go ahead.
So, just going back to your example of the jalebis.
The jalebis.
I found that interesting.
Okay.
One of the things that Prabhupada encourages, or just the Vedic culture or philosophy encourages us to do, is cultivate the mode of goodness. So when you
says the deity worship minister.
When you cultivate the mode of goodness, one of the things that comes about from that is to consider how your actions will affect others. So if the person who took the jalebis had have explained beforehand
Good point.
what they're doing, then people would not have necessarily made assumptions about that.
Yes.
So I think that's also part of the, trying to mitigate the problem to begin with.
And thank you so much for bringing the modes of material nature into this, because we're going to talk about them a lot more, about how to deal with conflicts. But when people are affected by rajas and tamas, they don't see things very clearly. And, Rambaru Mataji can talk more about this than I could, but just being a really good listener and being yourself in the mode of goodness helps people see things much more clearly. But yes, that was outside of my control, that he didn't do that. But what was in my control was to ask him. Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, okay, 2 more and then we move on.
Is assumption also related to the age and trauma of
Assumptions
individual?
connected to age and trauma?
Trauma, yeah.
Trauma. Age and trauma, not Toronto, trauma.
Trauma.
Trauma, okay. Is conflict related to that, or assumptions? I think assumptions are pretty much an equal opportunity. I think we all seem to make them at all different ages. Like I said, we can become better at catching ourselves making them. So, and as for trauma, trauma is a very, very complicated, and that would be, again, something that Rambaru Mataji would teach us about. I don't know if people who are traumatized, I guess there's a good chance that people who are traumatized make certain kind of assumptions more often than those who are less traumatized. I don't know if anyone's not traumatized at all, but less traumatized. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we make assumptions about traumatized. Yes. We can make all kinds of assumptions. Mataji, did you?
Thank you. Maybe I'm jumping forward, but let's say we make an assumption about somebody and we don't want to be judgmental, but we want to be curious. So what I've noticed is that and we want to communicate. So my question would be what is the proper strategy to communicate in a good way? Because in my experience is that when I'm judgmental, but I'm trying to communicate in a non-judgmental way, it goes out, my internal state of mind, it goes out in the tone of what I'm saying and how I'm saying it.
Yeah. Yes, tone of voice, body language speak a lot more sometimes than the words we choose. That's a fact. Or as John Lennon once said, one thing you can't hide is when you're crippled inside. We're going to talk about that. Can I write you a post-dated check on that? All right. And there was one hand way back. Did you have your hand up, or you were just scratching your head?
On the trauma comment, so would you say it has a lot to do with our samskaras and how we react to certain situations and
Our purva samskaras especially, right? The ones from previous lives?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And this one?
Yeah, well, you know, the way we see the world is affected by so many things, like you're saying, samskars in this life, purva samskars, the social economic background we were born into, the way we were brought up by our parents, the culture we were brought up in. You know, there's a number of factors. And what's really interesting is, you know, your place, well, even here I heard there's devotees from like more than 20 different countries in New Govardhan. Yeah, so so you get an opportunity to work out different ways of communicating, the different communication styles and different worldviews. And in Vrindavan we had something very similar like that. And it took me at least 10 years to get some understanding of Indian psyche. You know, because it's so different than a guy like me from New York. It's very different. So let's carry on, okay? Where'd I go? Oh, here we are. I would like to show you this because it's a really good video. Okay, and now remember this word general, okay? In general, when dealing with devotees, assume good intentions. Now we know sometimes, like, you know, anyone who's familiar with child protection issues, there's a few people who don't have good intentions, but in general, assuming good intentions, or at least considering, if we're thinking negatively about someone's intentions, thinking what is another possible assumption or interpretation of what they've done. Okay. Oh, now let me ask you a question. What do you see? Scoring? Okay. Determination. What's that? A man with his head down, yes. Okay. Good. Someone else? What do you see? Concentration. Constipation? Okay. Constipation. I've done this presentation for like 3 years. That's the first time I've gotten constipation. Thank you for that. You made my day. A couple more? He just scored. Anger. Attention. Self-deprecation. Okay. So notice, and what was the question I asked? Right. So only one person actually answered literally what they saw. Right. She said somebody with their head tilted, or someone blue and white headband, or their index finger pointing. But everyone went, and this is not a criticism of all those people who were brave enough to speak up. But what we did was we did some interpretation instead of just answering literally, what do you see? Okay? So it can be very helpful to separate facts from interpretation and evaluation. There's nothing wrong with any of those three. But it's, again, that kind of self-awareness to know what we're doing at a different time. So most of you interpreted. Nobody, I don't think, evaluated would be like, he just won a point and he's a really puffed up person. That would be, an evaluation, right? So being able to separate these three can be really helpful, again, to avoid conflicts and also to just think more clearly. Right? It's a very sattvic, as Nrsinga Kavachapu was bringing up, very sattvic thing. Here's a few quotes. The highest form of intelligence is the ability to observe without evaluating. And this one's kind of fun. If you're from America, you might know who this person is. You can observe a lot just by watching. Anyway, Yogi Berra was a baseball player, and he had a lot of funny sayings like 90% of the game is 50% mental. Or if you come to a fork in the road, pick it up. Anyway, that was his. And the last one here is for most of us, it is difficult to make observations, especially of people and their behavior, that are free of judgment, criticism, or other forms of analysis. This is Marshall Rosenberg, who, if you've ever heard of nonviolent communications, he was a founder of that. He actually, he's passed away now, but he lived about 5 minutes from our temple in Washington, D.C. Okay, so that's not easy. He's saying it's not easy to do that, right? Because even I said, what did you see? We all jumped to, he just won a point. He's constipated? Anyway. Yeah. So to separate them, instead of Krishnadas procrastinates, we might say Krishnadas saves all of his Diwali shopping until the day before Diwali. So you see, one of them is a fact, and one of them is more of an interpretation. Instead of old people are slow drivers, a more specific observation, no matter what road he is on, my elderly uncle always drives 15 kilometers below the speed limit. You see the difference? Right? So let me ask you, which one of these is just an observation? Her artistry is awful, right? If you said my mother painted 4 paintings last week, that would be. But the word wonderful is more than an observation. My friend complains when we get together. What do we mean by getting together? It's a little vague. And what do we mean by complains? Lalita Dasi told me that red isn't my color. Yes, number 9, yes. Even though isn't my color might be an interpretation, the fact that she said that is fact, yes. 7, yes. Nitai Das was the last one out the door every day last week. That's just an observation. And 8, because of the word 8 doesn't work because of the word often. What does often mean? Once a week? 8 times, 8 times a week? Right. So I think you get the idea, right? About this can be really helpful, just like catching ourselves making assumptions. Just knowing when we're doing which. Right? Just like I was talking to a devotee today, or no, the other day, and they were saying, oh, such and such bad mouths devotees all the time. He's really a rascal. Okay, so there's no observation there, really. There's no factual. What does it mean by bad mouthing? How often? Right, so that was immediately an interpretation, and then there was also an evaluation. He's a rascal. Okay, so you follow? Okay. And if that wasn't bad enough about causing conflicts, there's a difference between our intention and our impact. When I speak to you, I'm aware of my intention, but I don't know the impact I have on you when I talk to you. And when you speak to me, I know the impact you have on me, but I can't read your mind. I don't know your intention. So when you think about it, in any conversation, we can only be 100% sure of 50% of it, right? And does intention, what is that saying? That the path to hell is paved? Like good intentions, yes. Because it's really important to have good intentions, right? That's our whole Anyabi Lashita Sunyam, Jnana Karma Navritam, Uttama Bhakti is to have good intentions. But it's also sometimes important to be able to communicate your good intentions, right? Otherwise, people may still be making wrong assumptions about you. So intentions are really important, but also being a good communicator can be really important. Have you ever spoken to a person you can just tell by their body language they don't understand what you're saying? You ever seen that? Right? It's possible. So often because our intention is not matching our impact. And you'll sit at prasadam with somebody and say, oh, so-and-so's really on my case, but they totally misread what I was trying to say. Right? You ever heard some kind of conversation like that? Yes. Just behind you.
Is there also such a thing as assuming that our intentions are good?
You mean self?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could be. Yeah, I think I've done that sometimes. At least I can speak for myself. I think, yeah, my intentions are great. It's that person's intentions that are questionable. Whereas actually, if I looked in the mirror carefully, my intentions might be a lot less than great. Yeah. We can make assumptions about ourselves. God, it's amazing that we actually get through a day. Yeah. Anything else on assumptions and intention and impact? It's an important point to think about, especially because, basically, if someone when devotees contact me and say, our temple, our yatra is having a conflict. Of course, I don't do this, but I could say, listen, I know what your problem is. It's communication, because it's always part of the problem. Miscommunication, insufficient communication. When I in the outside world, when I train new leaders, or in ISKCON when I train new leaders, I say, if you knew how much communication you had to do to avoid miscommunication, you would not want to be a leader. Because almost in Kali Yuga, whenever there's a vacuum in information, people make negative assumptions. It's a tendency. Very strong tendency. So communication is so important. Yes? Marriage there's no conflicts.
What should be done and what shouldn't be done, and the partner is on a completely different page, and the whole thing falls apart on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Unless you really spell it out to the T, they don't always understand. Well, they don't understand.
But you've never had this personally.
I don't know why.
Yeah. Some of the best advice I ever heard in marriage is instead of each other thinking about what the other person's not doing right, each should just think about what they're not doing right and try to improve it. Yeah. Yes. Oh, there's all kinds of it. Yeah, I've been married 36 years, and I still make assumptions about my wife, and she makes assumptions about me, even though we should know each other a little better by now. Yes, Prabhu. Got to give men a chance to talk since they're greatly outnumbered here.
Just in regards to strategy, if you're assuming someone's made an assumption about yourself, for instance, is it it would seem that if you allow the assumption to go on, it's going to get more deeper or volatile.
It can, yep.
Is it, perhaps nip it in the bud straight away?
As much as possible, yes. So if you think just like for those of you who were here at the beginning when I showed the pictures of myself, you notice that I paraphrase it by saying, I'm sorry if this is a little self-aggrandizement, but I thought it might be good for you to know a little bit about me. So I tried to think, some people are going to assume, why is the guy in the beginning of his presentation talking about himself so much, right? So I tried to address that. So yes, it's a very good point, because we make an assumption and we think it's absolutely right. And then anytime we see someone, just like that point about people that you trust, when people that you trust and people that you don't trust, they could do the exact same thing and you completely make different assumptions, isn't it? They could say the exact same thing, or they could, be late for a time that you were supposed to meet, and the friend, you give a benefit of the doubt, and the enemy, just another reason to believe that they're not a good person. Right? Did someone did you hand that to somebody? Oh, no, okay. So, shall we carry on? All right. But great questions and great comments. Thank you. And here's good intentions and bad results. Okay, and this is kind of how you pretty much learn most things in life. We begin with being unconscious that we're not competent at something, right? Like, how many of you were meditating on assumptions before an hour ago? You were? Okay, that's pretty good. I'm impressed. Now we've been talking about them, so we're conscious of, gosh, you know what? I make a lot of assumptions and I'm not even aware of them. Then we practice it a little better and we become conscious that we become better at it. And then eventually, it's like riding a bicycle or driving a car. We don't even practically have to think about it. We do it. So I've seen, because I've been teaching this now for so many years, I'm at least getting towards, I pretty much catch myself. I'm pretty much aware of when I'm making an assumption, just because I've been aware for so long about it. Okay. Comments, questions? Yes. You want to use this one?
Oh yeah, it's there. In relation to the purification process and bhakti,
okay.
When we have conflict with another devotee, for example, could that be perceived as a opportunity to, or Krishna's trying to purify us? I don't know how to explain it very well, but
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I love the word you used, opportunity. Now, that would have been, when I asked for the one word for conflict, if I was asked that, usually I would say opportunity. Right? Because if you can work out a conflict with someone, it definitely can improve relationships with that person. It's wonderful. It's not that every mediation we do, the devotees hug each other and they're crying and all that. But when that does happen, it's really special. It's really wonderful. So, as devotees, we try to see, what happens to us in our life as coming, our karma on one hand, but coming from Krishna on the other. That in the 10th chapter of the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada says that verse, Tatenu Kampam Sukshamikshamano, should be the guide for all devotees. Right? That, paraphrasing the verse, when something challenging happens to us in our life, we thank Krishna, we offer our heart, our obeisances with our heart, our words, our mind, our body, and we know that Krishna is so kind that he's minimizing things, and if we could actually develop that amazing, very advanced consciousness, then we already have pretty much, gotten our ticket back to Godhead. So yes, it's one of the many things that happen in our life that we can try to see Krishna's hand in and pray to deal with it in a favorable way.
Thank you.
I've seen for myself, this is a little plug for the mediation course, by the way. Like we have a saying, you can be a mediator is someone who takes two people or two groups that are fighting and sits down with them and try to help them work things out. So we say you can be a good mediator, or you can take credit for being a good mediator, but you can't do both. You can't have both. So dealing with conflicts can be an amazing way to make advancement. Because it's, ego is there, and empathy is there, and so many things that are helpful for us improving in our bhakti. Is that okay?
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we've done assumptions. And I'll tell you about a couple of other causes of conflict, though, just to, depress you a little bit more. Here's some more causes of conflict. Information. Do we ever have conflicts over information? What information is important? Like somebody says, this temple is the best temple in the Yatra because we distribute the most books. Well, our temple is the best temple because we make the most people who got initiated. Well, our temple is because we most plates of prasadam. So they're fighting over the importance of different information. And of course, misinformation, just pick up a newspaper, right? The amount of misinformation that's flying around the world right now is ridiculous, right? It's totally, and does it cause conflict? Oh my God, right? So information can cause conflict. Resources, of course, can cause conflict. The temple gets a big donation, and the head pujari wants to make some beautiful Janmashtami outfits, especially wonderful for Janmashtami, and the Sankirtan leader wants to buy 2 new vans for the brahmacharis. So they're fighting over resources, or how to engage devotees. So resources, and in household life, is there ever fights over resources? Are you all brahmacharis and brahmacharinis here? That was supposed to be a joke. You got bad audience. You didn't assume that was supposed to be a joke. Yeah, so they're definitely, right, conflicts over how to spend money and things like that in the family. Right? Relationships, I don't even think I have to say that. Structure is an interesting one, because systems and structures can cause conflict. I'll give you an example. That fanatical brahmachari I was in 1979. So we had in Detroit, we had a system that whoever won at that time it was called the Christmas Marathon, got to go to the festival in India. And so I noticed amongst the Sankirtan devotees there wasn't a very pleasant mood, because they were all kind of like upset when someone distributed a lot of books, because they're going to get to go to India instead of me, right? So I knew, I don't know, I just got some inspiration. I went to the temple president and I said, listen, next year, why don't we set a super high goal, like almost impossible to reach, but if everyone as a team reaches it, they can all go to India. There'll be enough money. And that totally changed the atmosphere. Just by changing the structure of the system. They were all encouraging each other when someone did well, and we actually reached the goal. We all went to India. But so structures, systems can cause conflict. Okay? And of course, values can cause a lot of conflicts. And we see that in our society. Devotees from certain part of the world see things in a certain way due to their cultural upbringing, others. I remember when I was helping to manage the Vrindavan temple, we were saying that the Goshala was getting too crowded. So, I can almost honestly say that growing up in New York, I thought milk came from the local supermarket. I didn't know there was something called a cow. Or at least, theoretically I must have known it, but I've never seen a cow. I said, well, we have to stop breeding. Obviously, we have to stop breeding, right? So it's too crowded. And then we had another one of the managers at the time was from a village in Bihar, in India. And he said, that's sinful. And I said, what? It's simple, it's just, there's only so much land and there's too many cows, But he, when he grew up, stopping a cow from breeding was considered sinful. And so we had this, we worked it out eventually, but values and upbringing, it was so different. And so do you ever see conflicts in ISKCON over values? Yep. Yeah. So these are a few more causes, and I'll just give you one last one, just to, and that is unclear expectations. That can be a real big source of conflict. In the outside world, good organizations are one that have good onboarding, they call it. You come in, you get to know how you can make advancement, how the pay structure works, how the health insurance works, how the, et cetera, vacation time, sick time, and all that. And others, they kind of give you the computer and say, good luck, right? So, unclear expectations is in a marriage. Can you imagine if before getting married, they don't have any discussion about how many children they want to have? And then after the marriage, one says, one at the most, and the other one says, no, I can't, big family, 5. It's going to be some conflict there, right? So unclear expectations is another big cause of conflict. Okay, so we've done a lot about causes, okay? A lot about causes of conflict. But it's good to have that kind of theory in our mind. This will have the same Wi-Fi as where I'm staying? So I have Wi-Fi, yeah? So I think it's a good time to watch a video. You've been hearing me talk a lot. So give me a minute to get it going, and I think I can put the, here we go. Let's see if it's, tech support has arrived. Maybe I need to let's see, what is it called?
Parents in the room.
Sorry.
Exactly. The third of the advice monsters. The sneak.
Oh, Christian, I keep on trying to get this to settle. Maybe I'll just hold it. Tell me if you can hear it.
So I caught up with a friend of mine the other day. I love her. She's smart, she's brilliant, she's talented. And after we grabbed our coffees and we did the usual warm-up chit-chat, Shannon looked at me and she said, Michael, you're a good guy. I need your help. I need your advice. And my monster was delighted. She started telling me what was going on, and I started to pretend to listen. Because quite frankly, my advice monster already knew exactly what I wanted to tell her. But I'm pretty good at the fake active listening. You tip your head on the side, you nod, you look engaged, yet caring, yet concerned. Small, meaningless words of encouragement. Mm-hmm, yeah, sure, yeah, right. Oh, you go, girlfriend, exactly. But honestly, my advice monster's like, could we just hurry this up, please? Because time is short. Finally, Shannon finished. So finally, I was able to share my brilliant advice. And make no mistake, it was brilliant. Shannon tipped her head on the side, looked engaged, yet caring, yet concerned, started nodding, made small, meaningless words of encouragement. Mm-hmm, yeah, maybe, okay, yeah, nice idea. Honestly, my advice, my help was going nowhere. My advice monster had sabotaged the conversation again. Now, this isn't just a Michael thing, it's not even a mansplaining thing. You, all of you, you know your advice monster. Somebody starts telling you about something, you don't really know the situation, you don't really know the people involved, you certainly don't have the full context, you definitely don't have the technical specifications, and after about 10 seconds, your advice monster's like, oh, I've got something to say here. Research tells us that medical doctors' advice monsters tend to interrupt their patients after about 11 seconds. But that's not really a medical thing, it's a human thing. Now, I can see some of you are looking at me and you're thinking to yourself, Michael, it's true. other people's advice monsters, very annoying, really, really pretty irritating. But my advice is, well, honestly, pretty fantastic. And what's wrong with advice anyway? Well, look, there is nothing wrong with advice. Advice is a key part of civilization. I mean, TEDx, it is one large forum for advice. The problem isn't with advice. The problem is when giving advice becomes our default response. And we all have this ingrained way of behaving. For most of us, it's become a habit. It's become an advice-giving habit. Or, for short. And it turns out there are 3 ways that advice giving goes bad. The first 2 are kind of connected. Here's the first challenge with advice giving. You're busy solving the wrong problem. This happens all the time. We get seduced into thinking that the first challenge that shows up is the real challenge. It almost never is. It's people's best guess. It's their first hypothesis. It's a stab in the dark. But it's really rare that the first challenge is the real challenge. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that somehow miraculously you are finding and working on the real challenge. Here's the second issue with advice giving. Your advice is not nearly as good as you think it is. And if you're thinking to yourself, oh, no, Michael, no. My advice is magnificent. Well, I'd encourage you to go watch all those TED videos on cognitive biases. They will explain just how bad your advice normally is, particularly if you think you give good advice. But those first 2 are just you kind of wasting people's time and life and resources and money. So, no big deal. The third issue about giving advice cuts a little deeper, and it cuts both ways. If you are on the receiving end of advice, if you're on the receiving end of somebody's advice monster, you're constantly getting the message that you can't figure this out yourself. And that cuts away at your sense of competence and your confidence and your sense of autonomy. And if you're on the other side of the equation, if you have an advice monster, and if I can be clear, you all have an advice monster, well, forget about the fact that you're disempowering people, and forget about the fact that you're a bottleneck to everybody around you. Just that added responsibility of having to have all the answers and to save the person and to save the day, it's exhausting and it's frustrating and it's overwhelming. Now, I can see you looking at me and going, yeah, Michael, point well made, we get this, I get it, I understand, yeah, fair enough. And I know you do get it, it's straightforward, you get this. In theory. In practice, this is still how you're showing up on an everyday basis. That. So what's going on with that? Well, it's your advice monster. You keep feeding it, and it is insatiable. Somebody starts talking, and your advice monster looms up out of the dark and goes, oh, I'm going to add some value to this conversation. Yes, I am. Here I go. You have to learn to tame your advice monster. And to tame it, you have to understand it. And it turns out your advice monster has 3 different personas. And you listen up, you'll hear the one that resonates most for you. The first persona of the advice monster is tell it. Tell it. It's the loudest of the 3. It has convinced you that the only way that you add value is to have the answers. To have all the answers. To have all the answers to all the things. If you don't have all the answers, then you fail. Anybody kind of know this one? Yeah, I thought as much. The second advice monster, a little more subtle, it's called save it. Save it has put its arm around you and gone, your job, your only job, is to rescue everybody. Don't let anybody stumble, struggle, have a difficult time. Don't let anybody fail. If anybody struggles at all, you fail. Anybody know this one?
I'm Morgan. I have 3 kids.
There we go.
The third of the advice monsters, the sneakiest of the 3, is control it. Control it has convinced you that the only way you win is to maintain control at all times. Don't let go the grip of anything. If anybody else takes over control even a little bit, then you and they will definitely fail. Anybody know controller? That's my favorite one personally. And in fact, there's something that connects all three of these personas. And this is an important point. In that singular moment, when your advice monster is in control, you are saying that you are better than the other person. You're better than the other person. You're saying that they're not up to it. You're saying they're not good enough. You're saying they're not smart enough, wise enough, fast enough, moral enough, experienced enough. You're basically saying that they're not good enough. But it's not only the other person that is diminished in this moment when your advice monster is in control. You're diminished as well. Because when your advice monster is in control, you lose that connection to your humanity. You lose that connection to your empathy and your compassion and your sense of vulnerability. You start using your answers as your armor. Now, I was going to give you a quick little talk about the power of empathy and compassion and vulnerability, and then I thought to myself, Brene Brown. Oh, the Dalai Lama. Oh, Jesus. Okay, I think this ground's been pretty much covered. So, rather than that, let me give you a quick primer on how you might go about taming your advice monster. And what you're looking to do is replace an old habit, the advice-giving habit, with a new habit. Can you stay curious a little bit longer? It's as simple and as difficult as that. Can you stay curious a little bit longer?
So that's really important to remember. He's going through all of this, but he's basically saying, not that we don't give advice, we're devotees, we give advice to the kangaroos, but be curious a little bit longer. And you'll see in a few minutes, make sure that when we are giving advice, that it's the right advice to give that person.
How do you stay curious? Well, questions are the kindling of curiosity. They're the light that holds back that darkness of the advice monster. So let me share with you the 3 questions I wished I'd asked Shannon when we were in that cafe together. The first question is this: what's the real challenge here for you? What's the real challenge here for you? It's the focus question. It recognizes that at the start of a conversation, neither of you really know what's going on. You just both think you do. So not only does what's the real challenge here for you keep your advice monster at bay, it repositions you to say the most important thing I can be doing here is to help you find the really important issue, not to provide the fast, wrong answer, which is what happens right now. The second question that I wish I'd asked Shannon is, and what else? And what else? So the acronym is AWE. It's literally an awesome question. And what else has it as the insight that the first answer they give you is never their only answer, and it's rarely their best answer. So when you ask, and what else, not only does it tame your advice monster, but it helps you go deeper and further on any question that you ask. So before I give you the third question, which I think you're going to like, let me just show you how these 2 questions can play really well together. So we're going to do something live right here with us.
So let's all do this, okay, what he's about to ask us to do.
So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of a real challenge that's going on for you right now. It can be big, it can be small, it can be about life, it can be about work, it can be about a project, it can be a person. I don't mind what it is. Take your best guess. This is a real thing, so actually think of something. You can write it down if you want, or you can just keep it in your head. And now you've got that challenge in mind.
Okay, so everyone have a challenge, some big, small, some kind of challenge you have in your life right now, okay? Got it? No, not at all. It can be with yourself. Okay?
I'm going to ask you a question. Here it is. Thinking of that challenge, what's the real challenge here for you? What's the real challenge here for you? Yeah, I can see people working. I can hear brains ticking over. This is great. Stuff's opening up for you as you think about that. You're like, okay, I think I've got the real challenge here for me. That's nice. But we're not done yet.
Okay, so got that? and try to answer that for you. What's the real challenge here with that challenge you have in your mind? And
Let me ask you another question.
here's the second question.
And what else? What else is a real challenge here for you? Because I know there's more than one thing. So what else? What else is a real challenge here for you?
So, okay, that's it. So whenever you came up the first time and he asked, and what else? What else is the real challenge here? So think about that for 10 seconds.
Just notice how that's popping up and how stuff is opening up for you. This is lovely. But of course, we're not done yet. I've got another question for you. What else? What else is a real challenge here for you? Because there's still more to be unpacked here. Some of you are like, this is amazing. I didn't know this was all here. Where is this all coming from? Right. I've got one final question for you. I'm going to step to the edge of the red spot here just to make it really dramatic.
Oh. And you can stay at a Hilton also.
Now that you've considered all of that and you've done some thinking, what's the real challenge here for you? Exactly, your head explodes. You're like, oh my God, what happened here? And for some of you, you're like, wow, this is really, in a minute or less, just open up a new way of seeing this. But actually, here's a really key part of this. You'll notice that your answer to the first, what's the real challenge, and your answer to the final one was different. And why that matters is if I'd been busy trying to solve that first challenge, I'd be offering up my slightly crappy advice to solve the wrong problem.
That's the key point. We just went through 12 minutes of this, but that's the key point. We're so asking questions like, and what else, often gets us down to what's really at the bedrock of what's going on. And that is what's required in the last half hour that we have today to actually deal with conflicts. So let's see, how much time do we have left? Okay, it's only a minute and a half, so we'll finish this.
And honestly, that's what's happening all the time. The third question that I wished I'd asked Shannon back in that cafe, it's a difficult question, but it's so powerful. The question is, what do you want? What do you want? Because when you get clear on what you want, it becomes the foundation for action. It becomes a foundation for progress. When you know what you want, you get to step towards that autonomy and that confidence that we were talking about before. And when that happens, you're...
Or as Prabhupada would say, what was it? What was that letter to Karandar, Prabhu? Independence? Intelligent? Yeah. Thank you, yeah.
Advice once that really has not much chance. So that's the challenge in front of us, to replace an old habit, the advice-giving habit, with a brand new habit, staying curious a little bit longer. Because when you do that, you begin to empower people, not by giving them the answer, but by helping them find their own answer. Not by rescuing them, but by helping them find their own path. Not by holding on to control on everything, but by giving up some control and inviting others to step in and to step up. And all of that becomes possible when you tame your advice monster.
Okay. And it's a little long, but did anyone have something different from the first and was it weird third or fourth question? Yeah, it's so important because even for, let's say, we're sharing Krishna consciousness with others, sometimes we do it like you know what a shotgun is? It sends out little pieces of shrapnel. So like if I shot it, a bit away, it might have a target this big. And sometimes our sharing of Krishna consciousness like that, we kind of close our eyes, shoot, and hope that something hits that helps them. But when we ask the right questions, get to know people a little bit, then it can be more like a laser and pick the part of the philosophy that actually really touches their heart. So this is what he was saying here leads up to a lot of what we're going to talk about, how to actually deal with conflicts. But what questions, comments do you have from the video? Was it worthwhile listening to it? Okay. What's that? Staying curious longer. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a lot, but just staying curious a little bit longer. I had a perfect when I made so many mistakes as a Sangathon leader. Oh my God. Ugh. Anyway, we had this one brahmachari who he came up to me. I was the ashram leader, and he said, "Prabhu, I'm leaving the ashram. I'm going back to where my parents are." And I just assumed. I didn't stay curious even 1 second. I just assumed it has to do with a woman. And so I just gave out, I just, Pungsastri, Amintani Baba, Mitam, all the heavy verses. And this is nonsense. I didn't let him get a word in edgewise. And finally he just said, Harbol. Walked out. I find out, a few weeks later that his parents got in a car accident. They own a farm. And he felt guilty and wanted to go back and help the farm while they were healing. So I didn't stay curious at all, right? So anyway, and as it turned out, it worked out well in the end. I said, what if you move back in the ashram, but all the brahmacharis will go up on a Monday and help the farm every week? And there was probably 15 of us at that time. So anyway, we worked it out, but I totally blew it. Totally blew it. Yes, Nishaya Kavachpu.
I really like the whole sort of sequence he was talking about, and the conclusion of the sequence is, rather than giving them your solution, help them find their own solution, because that's going to mean something more to them. It's just like one of the things, as a teacher, you're aware of this, is when you teach is rather than you just doing an information dump on them,
right.
You help them to discover the knowledge, and then that they buy into it. So by finding their own solution, they actually, they'll apply it. Whereas you give a solution and you think, well, they're not going to listen to that anyhow, so what's the point?
Beauty. Yes, we call it often helping people help themselves. Yeah, Prabhu?
Thank you. I teach some of this stuff and I still don't practice. One of the forms that the advice monster takes that's also subtle is solving type questions. Not the type of questions he was talking about, which are coaching type questions, inviting the other party, but where I have taken responsibility. Well, have you tried this? Have you thought about this? And I'm basically going through a decision tree of things I would have done, but I'm thinking it's not advice because it's a question. But tell me another question.
Yeah, it's all kind of taking on other people's problems. But one of our mantras is, don't take on other people's problems as if they were your own, which is what you're talking about. Yeah, thank you. Good to see you, Prabhu. It's been a long time. Yes.
I understand that you want to just keep asking them and make them think about their situation. Mm-hmm. But sometimes people aren't looking for that. They sometimes want some explicit advice.
Yes, true.
Because you have far more years of experience dealing with these things.
Right.
So with little kids, you have direct instruction, maybe not with an adult. Yeah. So is there a situation where...
Sure, and not everything will be to the extent that, like Nishan Kabacha Prabhu was saying, but even staying curious a little bit longer, make sure that you're not, what did he say, giving your slightly, well, even let's say brilliant advice, but it's not actually the situation that's really affecting them. Right? Like, we're going to talk about them maybe even today, if not tomorrow. There's a position, or what we say is a concern, and then there's the underlying interest, like an iceberg, what's really pushing things on. So like I may tell you, one of my challenges I'm going through right now in my life is, I retired from full-time work, but I'm still doing consulting work, and should I give that up and just do, focus more on hearing and chanting and serving, or should I continue? And there's financial things and this and that. So that's my question. But if you ask me really good questions, and we will do this exercise tomorrow. The power of good questions is that you ask the right question, and then the other devotee really starts thinking a lot more deeply about what's going on. And then if they say, could you please give me some advice, then it's much easier to do so because you actually have, you're talking about the real situation. Yeah, but when you think about the Shastra, you know, first of all, the 6 questions in the very first chapter of the first canto, pretty much you could say on one level, the rest of the Bhagavatam just answers those 6 questions, right? And then all the great questions of Shonaka Rishi, all the great questions of Vidura to Maitreya, all the great questions of Parikshit Maharaj, the 17 questions that Arjuna asks in the Bhagavad Gita, right? The questions are so powerful. There's that one beautiful purport where Prabhupada's saying, you know, everyone from the time they wake up to the time they go to sleep, there's just questions and answers. He says the birds are asking questions, the lawyers, the people in the parliament, you know. So the question is the right questions. That we'll talk about tomorrow. Is that all right?
Thank you.
Did someone I can't see, it's a little dark here. Yes, Mataji.
Thank you. I was going to say, I mean, his situation, he explained that he's catching up with a friend that has asked for his advice, but perhaps that would be our first assumption, is that somebody actually wants our advice.
Yeah. Has anyone ever had a situation where you were given advice that you didn't ask for? Really?
Yes.
I'm totally shocked.
The other thing I would comment on is
Yes.
the idea of whether we're invited into a situation where advice could be given, whether it be children or adults in a parenting situation. I would say that this is still more powerful to empower our children to come up with their own solutions, asking them more questions and what their solutions might be, rather than thinking we have the answers just because we think we have a lived experience.
Yeah. And it is, you know, little time, place, and circumstance. I think, you know, because we often use, I mean, obviously for good reasons, Prabhupada is our acharya, but there's never been a religious organization in the history, you know, at least thousands of years, where there's been such an age gap between the spiritual leader and the disciples. I mean, we were literally just kids, you know. I remember when they said Satsvarup Maharaj turned 30, it was like, oh my God, ancient. Right? We had buttons that we wore in high school, you know, don't trust anyone over 30. You know, and even there you saw Prabhupada treated Satsvarup Maharaj, Kirtanananda, Mukunda Maharaj, a few people a little differently because they were a little older, right? But most of us were, you know, early 20-somethings, many of us, or late 20, right, Ramaru? We were really young. So there was you know, telling us, but especially certain devotees. Yogeshwar Prabhu is a very good example. Yogeshwar Prabhu, his relationship with Prabhupada, he actually asked Prabhupada questions, even like slightly challenging, but very respectfully challenging. And you know, Prabhupada appreciated that, actually. And he did ask, one time I know Burijan Prabhu, he asked, there were 2 sannyasis who were going to a country, and Prabhupada asked his advice, well, who's going to be, how are they going to get along? You know, and they had that discussion. Did someone? Yes,
Just following on from these last 2 things, particularly Bhavi's question, we definitely have to check in with the person and test, were they hoping for some advice? If we simply assume it, we're often solving our own discomfort. I want to feel helpful right now. Your discomfort's making me feel uncomfortable, so let's clear that up. It's not really, you know, we're not putting their needs ahead of our own. He's not saying never advise. He's saying don't prematurely advise, stay curious longer. Yeah. And the metaphor I often think about is a golf caddy. It has all these different clubs. The art in any form of communication is to recognize what tool does this situation call for. And the problem is most of us are very experienced at offering advice, and we've never even tried empathizing. But it's clearly not always appropriate. So the joke that Stephen Covey would often tell someone, say, hey, where's the bathroom? My empathy detects some bladder discomfort. No, just point out where the bathroom is. He wants a solution.
Exactly. And I think your golf club example is probably a little better than my laser and shrapnel one. So thank you for that. I'll try to incorporate that. Let's move on a little bit. Is that okay? Unless there was, okay. I I have to go forward wait a second. Is this gonna, oh, I see, I wasn't in the PowerPoint. Slight problem. There we go. Causes of, we're not gonna do the details of that. Emotions, a little bit about emotions. I really love this little exchange, because I think when I first read the Bhagavad Gita, I thought Krishna was going to let him off the hook. Say, yeah, you're right, it's really tough, it's really hard. But Krishna doesn't, right? He says, no, by abhyas and vairagya, you can control your mind. So, and then the Advanti Brahmana, these are very amazing discussions about the mind, right? These people are not the cause of my happiness. He was being urinated on and all kinds of, right? If you remember in the 11th canto. Neither are the demigods, my own body, the planets, my karma, time. Rather, it is the mind alone that causes happiness and distress and perpetuates the rotation of material life. Very powerful speaking by this Advanti Brahmana. All the senses have been under the control of the mind since time immemorial, and the mind himself never comes under the sway of any other. Anyone have that experience? Only me. He is stronger than the strongest, and his godlike powers is fearsome. Therefore, anyone who can bring the mind under control becomes the master of all the senses. Failure to conquer this irrepressible enemy, the mind, whose urges are intolerable and who torments the heart. Anyone have that experience? Many people are completely bewildered and create then this is, of course, the connection to this training, and create useless quarrel with others. Thus, they conclude that other people are either their friends, their enemies, or parties indifferent to them. And this is a nice, if someone bites his tongue with his own teeth, at whom can he become angry in his suffering? Or as Prabhupada told Peter Burwash, do not be upset at the agent of your karma. Right? Someone's, giving you a hard time. They're giving you your karma on a nice silver plate. So it's powerful. The Advanti Brahmana preaching is very strong. So emotions, are a little like this. And I find this a lot when people are very emotional, and that means their reasoning has kind of gone down the tubes. They'll say things to someone, or they'll do something and then the other person takes it, oh, now I know what they really think of me. You ever have that? And often it's not that. It's Rajas and Tamas are really pushing someone to often be pushing me to often say or do things that normally in more calm consciousness I never would do. And that happens a lot when you get behind a keyboard also, right? So I just find that this is a bad time to make important decisions or to write emails and things like that. It's better to calm down a bit, because we can do and say a lot of things when we're the emotional intent, especially when Rajas and Tamas are strong. So what do you do when you find yourself kind of being affected by the modes, and you're angry, you're upset, you're fearful, you're anxious? What works for you? And this is a serious question. What works for you to kind of get in better consciousness? Nishringa? Chanting Hare Krishna? Okay. Talk to Krishna. Okay, yeah, talk to Krishna. Breathing, yes. The pranayama is mentioned in the 3rd and 4th canto as a connection between the mind and the body. The mind and the breath. Senior moments are just like flying all over the place these days for me. What's that? Walking away, okay? And there's a lot of places you can walk around here. You're lucky, yes. Yeah, talk to someone. And someone that you trust. Yeah, better not than someone you don't trust. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Friendship is so important in Krishna consciousness. And, we may have hundreds of acquaintances. Right, exactly. The right person. I feel like I have like 3 really close friends. Like I can say anything to. One of them is Brahmatirtha Prabhu, with perfect questions, perfect answers. Another one is Yogeshwar Prabhu. And Others? Anything else? It's funny when I asked this in work, you get all kinds of, several people, especially in the southern part of the United States, they say, I take out my gun and start shooting things, and that really calms me down. Yeah. Not animals even, but just like, targets or whatever. They also say, I go into my truck, I roll up the window, and I blast heavy metal music. So, all right. It takes all kinds, But it is good to be aware of what actually works for us. And to, and what works to calm other people down or to help them be more sattvic. Nishinga? Feeling heard, yeah. That's usually, is that what you're going to say, Nishinga? Listening, yeah. It's so sad when you think about it. I'm sure because Vrindavan Vinod Vihari Prabhu's, I know him, when he was a teacher in Vrindavan. But, most schools, you learn reading, writing, arithmetic, etc. And if it's a good school, you might learn public speaking, but I don't see many schools that teach listening. And it's probably the most important skill you can have as an adult. Right? It's really a shame. You're going to say something, Shane? Oh, you were dead. I saw you. Okay. Yes? Yeah. Well, that shows you the last time I learned anything about a classroom. Sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah. I've spent too much time in India where most things are still rote memorization. That's the thing. Okay, shall we carry on? But the point is that emotions obviously play a role in conflict. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Sattva sanjayate jnanam. From the mode of goodness, knowledge comes. So we'll talk about this tomorrow also, but when the conflict resolver is in the mode of goodness, it rubs off on people. I love this saying, Krishna consciousness is caught as much as it's taught. You pick it up from someone who's there. Yes, Nishinga Kavacha?
Just following on what from Damodar was saying, it's like I've had the experience where I've listened to someone sharing what's troubling them, me thinking I need to give them advice, and then the last thing they say, oh, I feel so much better now.
Yeah. Yes. Or they may even say, thank you for that advice, and you didn't give any advice.
Didn't give anything, yeah, exactly.
Yes, yeah. Very good. So we're almost done, because I know we go till 6:30, right? Yeah. So yes, just being in the mode of goodness. Sometimes, some little advice about dealing with conflict, dealing with emotions. Pause before responding. Breathing, someone mentioned. Sometimes labeling the emotion that you're experiencing. It's again a sattvic thing, because you're observing your mind instead of thinking you're one with your mind, and then choosing your response. Okay, and this is stuff happens to us, and often the modes of material nature create a response, and the idea is to put a pause and think of what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, for example, before we respond. So, since this is a whole point, a major part of being Krishna conscious, right, is choosing how we're going to behave when things happen to us. And that verse, Tatenu Kampam Sukshamikshamano, 10:14:8, and Prabhupada said it's the guide for all devotees. It's all about how are we going to respond when challenges arise in our life, right? And it says that, taking shelter of Krishna, basically. Okay, we kind of came up with some of these ideas, calming others, especially the main thing was venting. Apologizing, by the way, is a very interesting topic, because you can really make a terrible apology. Anyone have an example of what would be a lousy apology? Sorry, whatever. Oh, that's really bad. You won the worst apology ever won. Sorry, whatever. Sorry if you feel, yeah. Nishinga? I'm sorry, but. Yeah, oh yeah, but is a good thing. It's like if you said, Nishinga Kavachab, who was a really nice devotee, but, and you don't hear anything before the but, right? Right? So usually they say and is better, Or if you really want to, some people try to hide the but with a little better English, however, but it says the same thing, basically. Yeah. What's that? I'm just saying. There we go. Krishna just spoke from the altar. Yeah. Nothing personal. Okay, you guys are great at terrible apologies. Excellent. Anyway, one of my mentors, she was the ombudsman at Columbia University. She's retired now. She didn't say you need to do all 7 of these, but there are some good ones there. Defining what the offense might have been, acknowledging the harm, taking responsibility, recognizing the wrongdoing, a statement of regret. I really like this one if it's people that we're going to deal with on an ongoing basis, that you promise not to repeat the offense. And this one is kind of dangerous, right? An explanation of why you acted this way. You have to be careful with that one. Someone in the back have a hand up? Yes.
Thank you. My father gave us some great advice when we were kids. In Danish, the word for I'm sorry is translated directly to unguilt. And he used to say to us, you cannot apologize or unguilt for something you did on purpose. You can only acknowledge your guilt.
Okay, very nice. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so just so you know, coming attractions for tomorrow, we're actually going to deal with how to help people, how to deal with conflicts. So we've kind of laid the groundwork for it, and we'll actually talk about the skills and the process of how to deal with conflicts. So if you, same time, same place, obviously, and we will end on time, and please accept my humble obeisances, Bruce. Why don't you go? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Krishna is here.